Amanda, do you want to just start by just yeah, describing your where you exist in the world of eye movements and where you are and all that sort of thing. So we've
So
yeah.
I'm Amanda Douglas. I did my PhD at the University of Melbourne. I've taken a lecturing job at Deakin. I did my PhD under Larry Abel. So I looked at basic eye movements in frontotemporal dementia, but spending a lot of time with Larry means you end up involved in nystagmus. So we run a nystagmus clinic down at Deakin. So that's sort of my background for eye movements. I'm a clinically trained optometrist. Sorry, I should have led with that. Yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Nice. Siwan?
Yeah, my name is Yuan Chen. Currently, I'm a lecturer from University of New South Wales, Australia. That's in Sydney. My background is electrical engineering. So my research is about computing eye behaviors patterns for mental state analysis. So I'm not a clinician, but I wanted to work with clinicians for the mental state applications. So basically, I just use different machine learning and signal processing to find effective eye patterns for mental state. So yes, that's about me.
Great.
I guess I'll go.
Yeah.
So I'm Robert Alexander. I'm coming from a research background, so I don't have a clinical aspect. But some of my research has touched on, well, a lot of my work deals with what we can learn about a person from their eye movements, right? Like what tasks they're doing, how much of an expert they are at a task, and so on. And so some of that has branched into clinical applications like, can we diagnose various conditions? Can we assess whether a medication is working or not, and that kind of thing. So I have this clinical aspect of things, but I'm not directly a clinician.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, so I'm Matt Dunn. I am an optometrist and in the UK lecturing in visual perception type stuff, binocular vision. Got into eye movements through nystagmus, so similar to Amanda, because of course you're working with Larry Abel. Actually, at one point I didn't mention I almost made the move to Melbourne to work with Larry Abel. So there was actually we put together a grant application for me to come and work on multiple sclerosis, which didn't get funded in the end, so that didn't happen. Yeah, so interest in eye movements came from nystagmus type stuff. What's the whole emerge thing? I just put the suggestion out there at a meeting of the British Ocular Motor Group back in 2018 that, hey, maybe we need some kind of standards or at least a common agreement about how to do some of these protocols, either in research or in clinical stuff. And that sort of ended up leading to this point now. Full disclosure, though, is that I'm expecting at some point soon to be involved in forming a company to become a manufacturer of an eye tracker system, which means that sooner or later, I'm probably going to have a conflict of interest, which means I'll probably have to step down at that point as being a member or at least the chair of this organization. So that's something that's probably going to come up soon, just so you know. But meanwhile, I'll continue to do what I can to coordinate. And then, but once that happens, I will obviously have a conflict of interest. But hopefully we can pass everything as required, and I'd love to continue to be involved. And I do think, speaking as somebody prior to that point, that the input of manufacturers is important in this as well, because as we talked about in the in ISCET, like ISEV, the people who manufacture the equipment should probably have some kind of input, but they shouldn't be leading the agenda, which is why I think I would need to step down at that point. So that's me and my disclosure of the fact that at some point I'm probably not going to be as involved as I am currently, but hopefully for as long as I can be. Great. So, so in terms of understanding ISET's aims and priorities, I just wanted to make sure that basically everything that has been decided, I've tried to, as I've been coordinating the initial meetings of the group, I've tried to avoid making any decisions myself. And so the kind of three aims that have come up, and I'll just bring those up on the ISET website so that everyone can see those. If I just share the about page. I'm sure you've all seen this before. But there are three aims that ISET has agreed to so far, which is to primarily it was about providing guidance and default protocols for both performing eye movement tasks, but also analyzing them. Specifically, clinical stuff. So not telling people how to do research. Yeah, maybe I'll just go through the three on the website and then we can chat maybe about understanding of what that might mean or how that might, what that might require. Being a voice for clinicians working with eye trackers, so kind of being the spokesperson for that sector, I suppose. And then another one which was added more recently was perhaps ISCET should be involved in the maintenance of what we're calling reference data sets, but it's what you would normally think of as normative data. But I understand that the term normative data is no longer something which is used as often. So those were the three things as they've been decided so far. But yeah, I just wanted to get the committee's thoughts really on whether those things seem achievable or yeah, anything from there, right?
Normative data for different conditions might be really difficult, is one of my thoughts. In that same vein, is it worth also then being, a database for the code, I guess, for some of the default protocols? So I see them as the baseline, but I'm thinking something like I've lost the words, the SR tracker, for example, having the code sort of available to go, hey, this is the baseline protocol. If you're new to this, plug this in, you run this. This is then, a prosecade, for example, at our level.
That was actually something which we discussed at one of the more recent meetings, because I think we talked about it, maybe it was the Australia meeting,
Yeah.
where we said, look, it's all very well saying we're going to come up with these new protocols and then manufacturers can incorporate them into their instruments and say, we can run the ISCET standard, but that could take years to come to fruition. And so, yeah, maintaining a GitHub or something where people can get the latest version for various eye tracking devices seems like a good idea. And I think that is something which I do wonder where would be a good place to just like write all this stuff down, because at the moment it's all recorded in the meeting notes, but creating an ongoing narrative or maybe a wiki or something, so that all this stuff is recorded.
Yeah, I think it could go in the remit along with the reference data sets though. Okay. So that's sort of where I think it would fit.
Okay, maybe I can make that to do for myself, then I'll do that after this meeting.
Yeah. Because I see that as, because if we think about make it easier for new clinicians to enter the field, being that sort of second bit there, that I think would make it a lot easier, because then you're not having to think through the programming and stuff. That should come if you eventually want to go down the research path, but I'm thinking about a clinician where you basically want to plug and play.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah, so I will add that because that has been discussed. I just haven't updated the website to reflect that. And I wonder just at that point, generally, with decisions that have been made in meetings, at the moment, I'm trying to hold them in my head, but I'm aware that now, there's different chairs for each meeting at different regions. So to keep a kind of constant thread and to make sure that everyone's on board with what has been decided in different parts of the world. I'm just trying to think of a system for making sure that those things don't get forgotten. Yeah, I feel like a wiki or something like that would be the way to do it.
I think one running page where we keep an updated like to-do list and major thoughts would be pretty reasonable, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just one step removed from the agenda as it is, right?
You mean, sorry, I mean the agenda for a given meeting or the agenda, the general agenda of ISCET?
Yeah. So I think a more general agenda, right? And indicating, I think we already had we have these lists of these are the major goals. So we could have a document that's just here are the major goals, the steps we expect to involve, here are the major opinions on them so far, right? So something like a wiki, but I think we should stick to something fairly minimal where you're not digging through many pages of information.
Okay. So under these major headings of the points 1, 2, and 3 that are the current goals of ISCET, maybe just have a bit of information about decisions that have been made on those, or do you think they should?
I would think so, but I don't know what everyone else thinks.
I like that. I can do that. I can go back through previous meeting notes and make sure that everything's been captured under those headings and try and keep it as brief as I can.
I would also have another. So 1, 2, and 3 and another.
Yeah. Miscellaneous.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'll just make a note then. So, So it would be just what the fourth point is just other general points that don't relate to those three aims.
There might be some general admin stuff that'll come up that doesn't relate to that aim, for example. And I think the wiki can then be, once it's done, it can be removed.
Right. Okay. Great. So the second point being about the unified voice for clinicians working with eye trackers. So in one of the meetings we talked about, is it appropriate for ISCET to sort of aim to be a regulatory body, almost certifying people as being competent? And we kind of, this decision at that meeting was that no, that's probably an overreach of what ISCET should be doing and probably not administrable anyway. So it's landed at the point of simply providing a unified voice, because at the moment, as I'm sure many of you are aware, the eye trackers available on the market are often not certified for clinical use, because there isn't seen to be a clinical need for them, because there's not enough people speaking with one voice to say let's have this happen. So yeah, any thoughts on that point?
I think that's the right fit for it. I think, trying to get in and certified, that would be a huge task. And we're nowhere near that. So that might happen further on, in 10 years' time, maybe. But I think it's something that would be just demonstrable. So yeah.
Okay. And then on the subject of maintaining reference data sets, so you talked briefly about it may be difficult to maintain a reliable set of data on specific conditions. I mean, it would also apply to normative data as well, but as we know, there's changes in lab conditions or wherever it might be can often have a big effect on the data captured.
So maybe a multi-center normative group of it. So if you're sort of saying, hey, we're going to run this particular standard or this particular protocol that we've all decided, you are welcome to then upload, de-identified data from and tag it as what part of the world you're from, because that could then be an amazing multi-center database.
Right. Okay. And then you would, I mean, I guess if these data had been collected using a agreed protocol, but by the time we get to that point, then you can really start to build a proper database, because at the moment, you might filter your data slightly differently than I do and all that kind of thing.
That's where I see it going, I guess, because I could see a lot of use to that, particularly for a manufacturer to then pull that database in and have those normative outcomes built into the machine.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I'm actually in the process at the moment of putting together a grant application for a multi-center study within the UK for repeatability of eye tracking data. This is something, again, that ISEV have done not too long ago, where they look at repeatability of the clinical electrophysiology data at different test centers with the same people traveling between those test centers and just having different operators in different places. And so the aim with that study is to run the same protocol. It would just be a protocol. It wouldn't be an ISCET one by the time that happens. And that would get a sense perhaps of that. But I think, yeah, being able to do that around the whole world once we've got ISCET standards set in place, that would be really, really good. That'd be quite powerful because at the moment, you get a saccade latency out and you're like, well, is this abnormal? I don't know, without, getting my own raw data. Yeah, I don't know how feasible. Sorry, go on.
And I guess the other question is, we don't know if there are, ethnic differences between eye movements in the same way that you have them for optic nerve heads, you have them for different aspects of all things physiology. Is it, are we all working off the same latency? Are there things that should be tagged in there? So putting in a lot of those demographic characteristics, I think, would also be really useful.
So, and actually something else that has come up one of the previous meetings was not, I think this might have been you actually, Amanda, that suggested this, correct me if I'm wrong, was not only coming up with standards for the data capture and analysis, but also the storage. What should be a common storage format? And then you could say, well, what metadata should go into that file format? Things like you just mentioned.
It wasn't me, but I agree. We should have a...
Yeah. So that will have, there'll have to be some thought at some point about that. Obviously, these decisions are to be made by the wider group. I'm just trying to make sure right now that we've all got our heads around what those aims are and where we're going with them, really. So yeah, I've kind of been keen from the outset that the decisions are made in the absence of whoever's chairing a meeting. So we try and let the let the people decide, as it were. But anyway, those are, yeah, actually I'll make sure that that's added onto this about as well. It's the, yeah, file formats, because that was mentioned at one meeting. Is anyone to add anything, discussion about around those, the three major remit points that had so far been agreed? Right, okay. So the next thing was around the sort of timescale for actually ISCET moving forward. You know, how fast is this train going to run? We're nearly, well, we're 10 months in now of ISCET's existence. Started in March last year, and we've been meeting roughly monthly. We haven't had a meeting for nearly 3 months now. And I think we spoke on, did we discuss this as a committee about trying to arrange them a bit more regularly, maybe every 3 weeks or 2 weeks? Robert, you arranged a date, didn't you, for the next one?
I don't even remember. I'm
Or was it wait, I'm trying to think where we're going next.
I remember the conversation happening. I think it might have been Rosh. Oh no, it's me.
No, well, no, the next one, yeah, the next one
It was me.
date for.
It's
That's
going to be
week.
February 15th will be the next
That was it,
one.
yeah. And that would put it yeah, roughly 3 weeks. No, okay, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, just roughly 3 weeks after the last one. So so yeah, does that seem like a achievable in terms of, like, you know, people's time?
When was the last one, Matt?
Well, the last one was quite a long time ago. If we go onto the meetings tab on the website, this was the one that Amanda chaired. That was end of October. So we've been going roughly monthly up until that point, and then it took a while to arrange this next one. So I said, well, let's try and get something in the diary for the upcoming one, so that we are not waiting after the meeting to think about when are we next going to have a meeting. Obviously, you know, meeting for the sake of meeting is pointless, but I think at this stage that's kind of what is needed to move things forwards. The main thrust of what's happening at the moment really is getting this survey study together, because that will inform what people are using their eye trackers for around the world, and then we can move forwards with standards development. But I wonder if there's anything we can do in parallel with that, to kind of, you know, should we be starting to think about the sort of things that a standard would require? Hi, Rasha. Hello. Still joining with the audio. Hello, Rasha.
Hi.
Hello, good to see you.
Hi, I think we are starting now, or we have started like 30 minutes ago, because
it was about 30 minutes ago, but I wonder, are you based in Finland? Is that right?
Yes, I'm based in Finland, but currently I'm in Cairo, like for a very short visit, like the last, less than 3 weeks. So that's why I'm sorry for this mess in the meeting, because it was also, I'm still like, I'm flying Monday morning back.
Oh, okay. And then you'll be back in Finland for...
Yeah, well, yeah.
Well, it's good to see you. I think this would be a good chance for for everyone to meet. Who has met Rasha here before? Robert, you were in a meeting with Rasha. So maybe if Amanda and Suan want to introduce yourselves, we can kind of just go through our brief introductions again.
Yeah.
So, hi, I'm Amanda. I'm a clinical optometrist in Melbourne, based at Deakin University. My background has been a PhD looking at eye movements in frontotemporal dementia, and then getting involved in nystagmus with Larry Abel.
Oh, that's great.
Hi, Rasha. My name is Xia Chen. I'm a lecturer from the University of New South Wales, Australia. That's in Melbourne. Sorry, not in Sydney.
In Sydney.
Yeah, my research background is to computer eye behavior, what we call eye behavior computing for mental state analysis. Basically just use machine learning and signal processing to find some distinctive eye patterns for mental state. The mental state is just very broad. It can be cognition or emotion or action. So just about the mental state. Yeah. So very glad to meet you online.
Thanks.
Nice to meet you too. Yeah. My turn?
Yeah, do you want to just briefly introduce yourself and what your area of work is?
Well, I'm an ophthalmologist. I'm from Egypt, and I'm dedicated mainly in like vision rehabilitation. And currently I'm a researcher in two universities in Finland, like Tampere University and University of Eastern Finland. And I'm working with a group that is dedicated in eye tracking and medicine. But of course, I'm more focused on my work as an ophthalmologist. So I just relocated in Finland like 1 year plus. But I still practice in Egypt like tele rehabilitation. So I also have some, like, this is my clinical practice. And yeah, I don't know if I need to say more. But I got some like post-grad education like from Cardiff, like for in the low vision in the UK. And so yeah, that's.
Right. I didn't know that you've been working in Cardiff University then.
Well, I took they have this beautiful like post-grad certificate. They have the professional certificate low vision, and they have, yeah, so I got both of them, which was nice, and I met nice people there. Yeah.
Right. Okay. We may have crossed paths then at some point.
Yeah.
Robert, do you want to just briefly introduce? Because I know you have met on screen, but
so hi, I'm Robert Alexander. I'm a researcher working in New York, and I study eye movements mostly from a visual search kind of perspective. I look at things like how expertise changes your eye movements, but because a lot of my work dealt with what we can learn about a person from their eye movements, I've had a number of different clinical applications fall out of that, right? Where you can tell whether someone has a condition, various clinical conditions or not, whether medication is working or not. So I have some interest in clinical stuff, but no clinical background myself.
Thanks, Robert. And yeah, just briefly, so I'm an optometrist and lecturer at Cardiff University. And my eye movement interest originally started with nystagmus. I guess I'll leave it at that for this, but it's really nice actually the kind of range of expertise we've got here. You know, Rasha being primarily a clinician as well. It's nice to have people who are more actively involved in clinical stuff, because I don't practice anymore as an optometrist. I don't know, Amanda, do you get much chance to practice?
A little bit. So I'm in the clinic on the uni mostly.
Okay, so that's good. It's a good balance there. Yeah. So because obviously this is primarily a clinical body, right? That's the idea, but it does require input from people who are less involved in that. Particularly Siwan as an engineer, then an electrical engineer, that's exactly the kind of expertise that we need on being able to come up with these standards. It's the same. I've always deferred back to ISCET just because it seems like a good model for what we're doing, and they the technical expertise is crucial there as well, but the clinical expertise is just as important, because we need to have everything represented there. So yeah, I feel I'm just really glad to kind of have everyone here in one place, and yeah, nice. It's exciting. So Rasha, just to bring you up to speed, we've just been talking about our understanding of ISCET aims. I will just repeat, I'll just paste this is the agenda for today, and I'd also say the first thing, I won't go through it again, but we did just talk about the remit of ISCET. Hopefully you've seen this on the website link that I've just posted on there already. We just went through the 3 main aims. This meeting is being recorded, so you can go back through and kind of repeat that bit if we need to. We were just on the point of just discussing how quickly we want things to move forward with ISCET. How quick is enough? What would be too much in terms of our workloads? And what would be realistic to actually get what ultimately is meant to be a consensus, international consensus on how things should be done. Clearly, that's not something that's going to move too fast, but at the same time, we'll need to keep momentum up in order for this to actually have weight behind it, really. So one of the things we mentioned along the chat from the Teams group was potentially meeting at 3 weekly intervals, and that would be not us as a committee. That's something else to discuss, I think, is do we need to meet like this as a committee? Because I realize that it's the times of day are awkward, particularly for Rasha, Siwan, and Amanda, because Rasha, is it quite late at night there for you?
Well, no, for me it's perfect. Like the 10 o'clock, I'm night owl, and 10 p.m. Finland or Egypt time, both of them are just same. It's good. It's just like the circumstances, but for me the timing is very good.
Okay, fine. But Suan and Amanda, I mean, I wouldn't like to be getting up for a meeting at 6:30 in the morning, and maybe I know in Australia apparently it's quite a common thing, right? But anyway, it may be helpful to keep doing things like this. It might be that this is an irregular thing, but what I'm talking about at the moment is the regularity of the main meetings where everyone comes together. So any thoughts on that?
My thought on that is what's the outcome that you're after having everyone together, right? So there may end up being too many cooks in the development of the survey. And so one of the thoughts that I did have is, do you want to have a subgroup that opt in to do the survey stuff and then have regular updates that are given to everyone as a big group at certain input points? And that might be less frequently, but then getting more bang for your buck for people who are tuning in from all over the world. So I guess what I'm looking at is, if I rocked up to a meeting every 3 weeks and there wasn't major updates, there wasn't movement on it, I'd be going, why am I getting up so early? Yeah, so that's sort of, and I'm very happy to be involved in the subgroup or whatever, but that's what I'm sort of seeing if I bring that up to other colleagues that are here, because I would really like people to get something out of it, I guess, is where I'm coming at that from.
Should just say that when we say a meeting every 3 weeks, that would be one of the 3 bioregions. So, people would probably typically be able to dial into maybe 2 of those out of 3, and one will just be in the middle of the night and absolutely impossible.
Are you planning to have repeats, I guess, is my question on that, then to have the same input to go, this is where this is up to? Because if the main aim is pushing that survey forward, I do think it's got to have some specific drivers. Now, obviously, the main one of those is probably Gemma, but whether or not you have people that give her a hand in terms of pushing that forward and then bring it back out for public consultation at these meetings, and that might be on that 3 weeks or monthly or whatever it ends up being.
Maybe I'll add that to the agenda for the next meeting. Yeah, we can put that on there, Russia. It's your region, isn't it? But I'll just add that on there if that's all right.
Yeah, because some of the meetings have been quite big, right? Like some of the meetings have been 60, 70 people. And that's great. Like that's ideally what we'd like to see at the meetings, to get as many voices as we kind of can. But I'm thinking it's much easier to put a survey together if you've got, say, 10 people that are doing most of that. But keeping the check and balance of we want everyone's input.
So obviously, the next meeting is just a general one, but maybe at that point we can sort of discuss, well, when would be, or how many people want to actually be involved in a subgroup, and then when would be appropriate for the whole load of people to meet again for an update. It might just be that we wait until there's some progress to be discussed and then go from there. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so I've tried to make sure that no decisions, I'm not making any decisions as such, other than just trying to bring together. That's my aim. It's not easy to do, but you're trying to get, everyone's input and see what needs to be done. And so, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think at the meeting, currently we can just make a regular meeting, but just after for half a year, we can change the regular meeting frequency. Yeah. So we can change that.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so should we just pencil in 3 weekly meetings, but then it might, actually who turns up to those might depend on the requirements, so that we've just got dates as placeholders ahead of time? Or something else? Or should we just wait to see what people say in the next meeting?
We might want to wait to see what people say, because if we're branching off into subgroups that are working on this or that specific topic, they may want to meet at different times than the rest of us, right?
Okay.
Could we make like a survey, if we can make it even when people are online, this questionnaire, like how often do you like to meet, and then we see whether 3 weeks basis or monthly basis would be.
That's a good point. Yeah, that could probably be added to the Zoom meeting for the next one. You've set that up, right, Rasha? You've actually established the Zoom link for the next meeting. Am I right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
You want to take that one then, so you could maybe just make sure that we're able to administer that during the next meeting, so that we can get people's thoughts on that.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things which we aren't doing anymore, hopefully, at the main meetings, was this kind of administrative stuff. Because this is the first meeting of the committee. Hopefully we can take all this stuff about, the meeting to arrange when we're going to have meetings, and that can happen here. And then at the main meetings, we can actually have just talking about the standards and things. Amanda.
Could it just be a meeting monthly? Like, is there any reason to make it to change what's been happening?
Could be, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I see your point of not bringing it to the thing and going, hey guys, do we want to do this? I don't think most people will care if it's every 3 or every 4 weeks. And I don't know that that will change the pace of things. I guess what I was sort of thinking is more, I think the subgroup needs to be discussed at a main meeting. I think, having people opt in to do that, because there are going to be a bunch of people that I don't think will want to do that, but will want to hear about it at regular points. So maybe it's a standing agenda item of where is this up to, and then someone reports on it monthly, for example.
Okay. Yeah. And of course, we've got the email group as well, which everyone's able to communicate via. So whoever posts to that, it goes to everyone. So maybe we could make more use of that in between. Is everyone happy with how to use that, by the way? I know that's later in the agenda here, but is everyone happy with how to post a message on that to everyone? I will just send a link to it now. It's this JISC mail thing. So this is the link to the
Sorry, while we're here, the next meeting it's got meeting 6 chaired by Ruth Hamilton in 5 days' time.
yes.
Cool. Okay.
So Rush is organizing that, but
Right.
it's
Okay.
being chaired by Ruth Hamilton, and it's, I guess, in the different regions, it's kind of up to you if you want to chair the meeting or if you want to rotate the meeting chair around. I mean, for when it's kind of started this, I was, other than the first meeting, I didn't want to kind of be chairing every meeting, so I wanted to try and pass that around. Now that there are 3 region coordinators, you might just want to just do that yourself. It might be simpler just to chair them yourselves, but if you want to find somebody else, then go for it.
Cool.
So yes, 5 days until the next one. And then the one after that, well, we've got a date in the diary, but we may decide not to use that. That's the one that Robert's put in the diary for February.
Okay,
So,
cool.
So we can go from there.
That's not up here yet, though.
It's not, no, it's only on, I didn't want to publish it until we knew what we were going to do.
Okay.
And you did say to us, didn't you, Robert, the time and date, February the somethings, but are you going to be able to make it to the next meeting, by the way, Robert? Are you going to be there?
I don't think so, actually.
Okay, so maybe then, well, I'm sure the date is on the Teams group, right, that you chose.
Yeah, I was gonna for the date for the next one that I was.
Well, the kind of placeholder date, but I mean, maybe it doesn't matter.
That was February 15th at 2 p.m. Eastern time, which I don't know.
Yeah, that's fine. I can put that 2 p.m. Eastern time. I'm using some kind of date and time conversion website to kind of come up with all the things.
Yeah.
My other thought on that, just recognizing that we will get daylight savings coming up in a couple of months as well, is can we do it when they send out a Zoom thing it sends a calendar invite to everyone on the mailing list? Because that way it will come up in Outlook and it will automatically adjust all the things and I won't miss it by an hour.
I don't know if we can do that because, well, you can send the downloadable like an IPS file, can't you?
I see it.
You could just do that. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, because I've been trying to convert to the time zones, and I've sort of picked a bunch of time zones where I know there are people from those countries using that, but we might be missing people, and obviously there's 1,000 possible time zones.
For example, I'm going to Perth on Tuesday next week, and I will be 3 hours behind Melbourne, so this will be 3:30 in the morning next week.
Right, good job we didn't do it next week then.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. All right. So, all right, I've got a note of that time slot for the potential next one. I'll just keep that in mind because I will be at that next meeting, Russia. So, so either you or I can bring that up as a potential slot that Robert suggested. But if not, then we can say we could push it back a bit further. Okay, cool. I think that's probably. Does anyone want to mention anything else about timings of the meetings, or is that sufficient for now?
The other plug I have for sending out a ICS is that it will also mean that everyone will then be aware that it's on, as opposed to having to tune back into and then consciously think about coming back to the website each time if they miss a meeting.
Good point. Yeah, okay. That probably explains actually when we've had fewer people turn up to meetings because it's just not on people's minds to do this. Okay. Yeah, the point you raised about there's going to be people who are not interested in being involved in certain aspects, which is fair enough. I think the very first meeting we had 60 or 70 people there, and people are keen to be involved in the process of setting standards, but not everyone's going to be keen on the process of administering a survey study. yeah, just making sure that people are aware when the main ones are, and maybe that's just the case of having occasional larger meetings is the way to go. Okay, so is everyone happy with how to use that JIS email thing, the link I've just sent there? So I think you're all signed up now. So if you just press post new message, it sends it to everyone. Anyone can do this. It doesn't have to be a committee member. And you can also pull and copy and paste details from a previous email that are all listed there on the ISCET on that. Yeah, there's an archive of all the previous messages. And also actually editing the website, that's another point as well. You hopefully have now got all the ability. So if you go on the actual ISCET website, so again, that is this one, you should see, if you're logged into Google, it is Google though, so maybe we might have changed things. You should see a little arrow, a little pencil icon in the bottom right of the screen. If you don't see that and you would like to be able to edit that, then if you could send me an email address tied to a Google account, I can then add you to that.
Yeah, I definitely don't have a pencil.
I've given access to your Deakin address.
Which is not tied to Google.
Which is not tied to Google. Rasha,
Yeah.
yours is tied to a Google account. It's a Gmail account anyway. Robert, you've given me a Gmail account. So I've got two in here for you. C1, yours isn't either. So if you would like to be
I'll
able to
shoot you
edit
one.
that, then
Yeah.
C1, it's crucial. Actually, no, C1, you can because you're the owner, aren't you now? I think we changed you to being the owner. Although can you? Do you see the pencil icon on that page?
Yes, I think I can see that.
Okay.
Last time I edited the page.
You managed to edit the website before, didn't you? Because of course that's
yes.
the thing that you're doing.
I was able to do it too.
Great. So Amanda, it's just you then. If you send me a
Sorry, I've just flicked you an email.
Okay, perfect. Great. That's fine then. Anything else in terms of just yeah, how to do the admin stuff? I mean, obviously, C1, you're primarily kind of communication stuff. So I suppose if anyone isn't able to, then hopefully C1 can point them to that. But I know that this has only happened since the last meeting with you, obviously. Yeah, is that all okay so far? Yeah, great. Oh, sorry, Rasha, you don't see the pencil as well. Okay, so the email address that I've shared it to is a Google account. It's a Gmail one. Is that the one you use for Google?
Yes.
It is. So
Yeah.
let me see if I can. Maybe I just need to send you another. Oh no, add to the contact. Are you logged into Google on the computer you're using at this point in time? It does say you're an editor, and I don't know unless I remove your access and add it again. That might do
Me?
it. Sorry, I'm talking to Rasha. Yes. Are you on?
Well, I'm on it. I'm actually on my mobile. I
Okay,
just I'm not. Yeah. So I have to. I can double check again when I'm on the laptop.
Yeah, if you check that, and if it's
But
not working, then let me know. I'll remove you and add you again. Hopefully that will then, it might send you an email just saying it's an invitation to be able to edit the website. But then that means after the meeting you can update the notes and so on. Great. Okay. Anything else on here? So oh yeah, we didn't just talk about committee meetings. I mean, I have people happy to just, if we feel that we need to, we can discuss on Teams to say that we should get together like this, or would you like to meet regularly like this, or it doesn't have to be often. Any thoughts on actually getting the committee together? Should we just see it as and when we feel the need?
I think as we see a need, because a lot of this coordination we can manage through the Teams group pretty effectively.
I think so, yeah. Okay. Right, next thing was around funding. So there are obviously some minor costs involved in setting things up like this. It's mostly at this point just website fees and so on. Amanda and I have kind of come up with a couple of suggestions for places we might be able to inquire about getting funding. And basically, we're looking for funding streams, looking to provide seed funding to initiatives such as this, pretty much anywhere in the world. It could be led by anyone, whichever country. We don't need a lot of money at this point, really. It's just something to cover, web fees and so on. I think probably something in the region of $500 would probably cover us for everything we need for a few years. Is anyone aware of any such initiatives? And I'll just paste the ones we've got from Amanda and myself.
I guess my other thought, if we don't come up with one of these, is does this just come out of one of the, one of our Unilab funds, or?
Yeah, it may well be possible to do that. I mean, I can go to my university and just say, look, can we just get that? That may well be possible. I'm just trying to sort of sending messages to Rasha directly because you messaged me about not being able to access the website. How do I send it? There we go. Yeah, so it may be that that's the simpler option, Amanda, and because we don't need very much money, sometimes it's sort of, is it even worth writing
The
a grant?
time.
Yeah, the time involvement. Yeah, I mean, if it's yeah, it's not very much.
If it's a couple of grand, I think it's worth doing. If it's a few $100, it might just be easier to go.
Yeah, go
It's
for it.
not worth my time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but I agree, it needs to happen.
Okay, so I'm posting two things which so Amanda found this improveddiagnosis.org. They don't have any active grant schemes at the moment, but it does seem like a good potential route for it. So just to be aware of that one. I did notice that every institution listed there is in the US, but then potentially Robert could be a lead on this if we did decide to get that we needed more money. I think maybe it's just worth us being aware of what those funding sources are. I can make a note to go to my institution next week and just say, look, I mean, once we know what it's going to be, actually. So Suwan, maybe the next thing we can talk about is things to do with the website and so on. Are there any known costs or estimated costs at this point? And then the second one, so that I posted there as well, that second link is an NIH grant. I don't think you have to be in the US for that, but again, of course, we have Robert in the US. And that is around coming up with, no, it's more about research standards. So some of you were involved in the research methods reporting guideline development, and this was something which was mooted as a possible way of funding meetings for that. At that point, we were thinking we were all going to get together in person, and we never needed to in the end, it turned out. So this may not work on a clinical guideline, but it might. I don't know. I have to look into more detail. So those are the two things which people have thought of so far. And I guess if anyone comes up with any more, maybe they can be posted on the Teams group. And meanwhile, I'll just go back to Cardiff University next week and just see, well, once I know roughly what it's going to cost.
You could argue for it as a clinical guideline in a research study, for example. So saying, hey, this is going to be the we're testing it to see if it can become the new gold standard for diagnosing in a clinical space, but we could put together a research project around it as a way to kick it off.
That's a good point. Yeah. Okay. So that NIH one might be a goer because this is an upcoming funding call as well. It's June 14th is when applications are due, which is a good timing.
I think both are worth watching just because you can spin what you want to do in either direction, right? Okay. Particularly if we then talk improved diagnosis, I flagged it up because when they do have a funding call, if we're looking at, again, a standard for diagnosing something specific in a clinical setting, whether that's nystagmus, whether that's whatever it is, if we can say, hey, this is the development of this and we want to put that out and test it, then that's a way to do it. Yeah. But I do think we're probably going to need funding before that comes open, I guess, for if we're talking $500 like that. Yeah, we probably need to get that moving before that.
Fine. Okay. So we'll just need to look into how much we need, and then I'm happy to go to my. Sorry, go on, Robert.
Yeah, the NIH one looks pretty good if when we're ready to scale up.
Yeah.
So it's I mean, for one thing, it needs some people who are informaticists, which I don't know that we have anyone who qualifies along those lines, but setting that aside, yeah, it seems to be at least partly aimed at assembling a team and developing the standard and soliciting community comments, which are exactly the things that we're planning to do.
Okay.
But I don't. Yeah. But my sense is it wouldn't be for a few hundred for the for the website. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we keep an eye on these two for the future. Is the bottom line there. But anything else that you come across, sometimes you just see these funding calls and then forget about them. I certainly forget about them, and there might be something just perfect that comes along. So if we've got more eyes on the ground, it's good. Okay. Right. So next thing is so obviously we've all kind of co-opted ourselves onto this committee, and there's been no kind of formal voting process. Now I mentioned Rasha, you didn't hear this at the beginning, but I think I mentioned it at the last meeting anyways, that I'm in the process of potentially setting up a company, an eye tracking company, which will mean that technically I would then have a conflict of interest. So I'm probably not going to be on this committee for the long run. I don't know when that will happen, but when it does happen, I'm going to have to step down as the chair of it. But obviously at some point we will need to set a threshold. Either that could be number of members, or it could be a date after which the committee members will be voted upon. Now, it may well be the case that you put yourselves up for it and then you get voted in, but we need to set that standard. Set that threshold as a committee now for when we're going to all.
I think when we're talking number of members, I think we also have to define membership at the moment, because there isn't an actual membership as such.
No, we only have people who subscribe to the email list, and they may
Yeah.
because they hate the idea.
Yeah, I was just going to raise that because we didn't mention it as a method of funding. Actually, if there's a membership and little even membership fees, this could fund us also for.
Yeah,
Eventually,
you've got 60 people,
yeah.
$10. There's your funding to keep the website and stuff running.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, if we do continue to model ourselves on ISEV, that's how they fund themselves. I don't think it's a huge amount, but the members do pay an annual fee. Obviously, at that point, we would need more people on the committee to deal with the finances and to deal with the membership stuff as well. But there we go. That's does that seem like a reasonable thing to aim for? Sorry, carry on.
I'm not sure about like the processing of such, like to collect, I mean, memberships. Do we need to have kind of a registered entity or something? I don't know about the logistics. Like, I think we need to dig into that.
Yeah, there may well be a lot of procedures involved, and I don't know how this works for an international society. But then, well, this is where I've Ruth Hamilton, and I think probably all of you at some point met Ruth Hamilton online, has been tremendously helpful in this, and she's going to be chairing the next meeting because she is the president of ISCET. And so any questions that I've had about this whole process that we've gone along, I've just fired them off to her, and she's like, "Oh, this is how we do it." It's not to say that ISEV do it right. I mean, there's been a couple of things that she's mentioned that she felt that could be done better. I think it was more like ISET. We've been aiming to try and do things more open, so it's not just things that are just decided by a small group, but we every decision is made by everyone. And she seemed to think that was an improvement upon what they're doing. And ISEV, however, it does provide us with a baseline as to how it could work. So, any questions about that? I guess.
Can we add a question to ask her in terms of how the setup for international society funding and stuff kind of worked?
Yes.
Not funding, but membership dues and stuff, and how that got processed, whether that was a bank account in the UK, whether that was whatever it ends up being. But if we can find out how that functioned, I think that would be very helpful, because I do think that sort of next step is to solidify membership, if that makes sense.
Maybe I wonder if we did end up having another meeting of the five of us, it might be worth getting Ruth along to that, just if we do have things to discuss. It's worth pointing out that ISEV was originally formed back in 1950 something, so she wasn't there for the setup of the group.
What does the setup look like now?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what we need to know. And their website is quite instructive. It tells you a lot about them as well. But they do serve, an important function. It's not just a society for the sake of it, and hopefully ISET will be similar. We are actually going to serve an important function in terms of standards and so on. Okay, so yeah, we need to understand a bit more about how that's going to work. I'm conscious we haven't really answered the question of what the threshold is for passing on responsibilities, or at least putting them to a vote. Do we need more information before we can do that? Is it just a bit early to be able to set that?
I think it's a bit early to be able to set that.
I agree, because I think you first have an entity and then you just like make the board, and you make voting, and I mean officially we can, but I feel like not everyone even volunteered for the when you have circulated the email.
Course, yeah.
So we can, of course, but I mean, could be a bit early, but we can
possibly. I know that at the meetings when we were discussing this, Stephen Macknick was one of the people there. He's obviously a well-known neuroscientist, and he was saying like we want to make sure that the people who are starting this off should be people who are more early in their careers, which I think it's fair to say that the five of us are, than in some of those bigger names, because there were some quite big names that came there, the first ones, and so that was possibly partly why we didn't have loads and loads of people nominating, because they were just giving us a chance, I guess, which is nice. And so yeah, hopefully we can kind of bring that to that point. Anyway, so
Okay.
yeah, we'll see. Okay, and then the last thing before any other business on this was just some thoughts about how to provide Gemma Arblaster with support, because she volunteered herself in one of the meetings to run the concept of the survey study via an ethics board. At one point there was discussion of, do we even need to go through ethics if it's just a survey and we're not going to publish it as a research study? But the decision was made that this should be done as an academic exercise with publication, which is fair enough, and it'll be worthwhile publication as well. But yeah, I mean, she's not going to be able to do that on her own, and would probably like some support in some aspects. Certainly, if we go down the route of focus groups, which is one of the things that was discussed, if it's as simple as firing off an email to various organizations, then that may not involve so many people. But yeah, focus groups and so on is going to require more input. So how can we best support her with that?
I don't know if we need to address this, like who would be interested, like a subcommittee or a subgroup, like who would be interested in academic research and specifically starting this research, and saying, because there's always like this research group with authorship and everything, and then there's us filling in the survey. So I mean, it could be some people would like to be involved in research. So I think we need to make clear but yeah, I mean, yeah, because then it's like, because when we send survey for people to just fill in, some people just don't have time, they're reluctant, but maybe if it's part of their research and it's, yeah, so maybe, and I think not everyone also would be interested in research, but others would be, so yeah. And while introducing ourselves, it just like pumped into my mind, like it's, for example, us, while each of you were introducing their interests and work, I felt like it's nice to collaborate, and if someone would be interested in researching, for example, more about nystagmus, we would do that. But then we have to be clear, like who's interested in that and who just is focusing on clinical. And so also I think that'll solve the survey, and also like a long-term like a long-term thing.
I guess the intention with the survey is for it to go much broader than the membership of just the people who are in ISCET, because we may not have reached the appropriate populations yet. So the aim is to send that to well, we've been compiling a list of regulatory bodies and professional bodies from around the world for various disciplines. Stop me if you know all this already, but just yeah. So obviously the people within ISCET can presumably help with that, and maybe this is a point really to be brought more to the main group rather than a committee meeting, because I'm sure there'll be people who would be willing to volunteer themselves to be involved in that process. But I guess it's about administering the whole thing. Sorry.
I think you want a subcommittee, and I think you want a subcommittee from around the world, but I do think it's something that you need to bring to the wider meeting to just say, guys, we're organising this subcommittee to help Gemma run this, and if people can opt in, that'd be great, right? And then that's people who actively want to be involved in that research to help it. And I think we are going to have other research projects that come up along the way in terms of creating these clinical standards and the pieces as we go along. I think it's got to be opt-in for people that are interested as they move forward with that, and whether that ends up as authorship or whatever that ends up. Like if it's 10 people that then meet and Gemma can go, hey, cool, I need to meet you guys every 2 weeks at the moment. We're talking through this, that, and the other. How are we going to get these out? How are we going to, what are the aspects of this that we need to bring to the broader committee? We've made a list within our subcommittee, just sending that to the mailing list and going, guys, is there anything else that needs to be on that list? That I think will move that forward a lot quicker than trying to ask 70 people to make each little decision that's based in that. And I think I agree with you. I think it is too much to ask one person to do on their own from one part of the world, when you then think that each part of the world is going to have their own ethics that it's got to go through.
Potentially big issue.
It's huge.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm wondering, is there a precedent for that sort of thing? If I in the UK wanted to run a survey and it was my study only, and I wanted to just, include you as a person who was involved in that study, not, as somebody to fill in the study in another country, I don't, do I require ethics in that country? Is that the case? Because it's outside of the jurisdiction of the UK. I don't know
No,
the
I
answer.
think you get a ethical approval from the university,
Hmm.
but I think one ethical approval could be enough in some countries. But
Hmm.
if we're gonna do interviews or focus groups, like if it's a survey filling, in my humble opinion, like we need to double check this, but like my experience, like if it's a survey, you get the ethical approval from, for example, Cardiff. But then for some focus groups, maybe it's needed.
Hmm.
Yeah, if you want
But
to have a
yeah,
focus group in Australia with Australian participants, you're going to
Hmm.
need Australian ethics.
So one thing I'm thinking of is since COVID, there's been a lot more kind of research studies which have taken place online. Even some kind of psychophysics studies have happened. I think to an extent, eye tracking, using webcam. Um, do they require ethics in every country where there is a participant? It seems.
but also
Um,
according to the
I
data.
don't know if they were intentionally targeting
Yeah.
specific countries though, which makes a big difference, right? Like if I put my university would say like, oh, you want to put a survey online? Okay. But if I said, oh, and I'm gonna specifically aim at these particular academics in this particular country, and I have a collaborator at this and this university, they might start saying like, okay, well, those IRBs might want to review things, or
hmm.
you have to make sure you're following whatever local policies exist. And I don't know. I haven't
Yeah.
I haven't tried surveying
Yeah, internationally.
nationally, but I remember at least if I wanted to go and run an experiment in different countries, I know that they have specific
Yes. Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Maybe, I mean, hopefully, if Gemma might have looked into this a little bit already, and there may be other people on the main group who would be able to give some input to this. Because it sounds as though none of us are really that sure. And it's all very well for one person to go to one ethics board and say, "What do you think?" But then, yeah, it gets complicated. Unless the decision is made to pull the plug on it being an academic exercise and just do it as more of an informal thing. I don't know if that really then it requires ethics. But anyway, this is to be discussed at the main meeting, isn't it?
Yep. But that if it is going to go down that path, I think the way to support her is, as Rasha has said, with a small subgroup
Yes.
that are people that opt in to do it.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Yeah, and if I may add, because we're doing a survey with the ESLR, which is the International Society for Vision Rehabilitation Research, and the ethical approval came from City University, like University of London. But then this is the only ethical approval that we have, and the survey is international. And we should be, the next thing is focus groups. So I can double check my colleagues, but we only got one ethical approval from City University.
It may be if the nature of the study is quite, it's very low risk. You're filling in a form. It's not like we're doing an invasive eye procedure, and the standards for that are going to vary. Because you're so far away from the danger threshold, it may be that ethics boards are happy to say actually this is something that can be international, because it's not going to be considered in breach. But I don't know. I don't know.
Well, we're also asking low vision professionals about their work and how each country has reached, and so I think
how are you recruiting them, Rasha?
We're sending the survey throughout to our contacts.
Okay.
Oh,
So it's
okay. Well, that sounds very similar analogy then, really. And if it's been approved
Yeah.
by the university in London, then that's a very well known. I would trust their ethics boards to know what they're doing. So that's useful information,
I
actually.
check also.
Would you be able to
Yeah.
bring a bit of information about just how that's then set up and structured to the next meeting, so we could kind of that forwards and just see what people think? I don't know how you can get an authoritative answer on whether this is or is not okay. It's really hard to know.
I mean, I can go and ask the ethics group here and just say, hey, if this was approved in the UK and they want to do an international study, if I was going to distribute it in Australia, is that okay? Or do I need to run it through ethics here? I can ask the question.
If you were distributing it, that might be a bit different, But if I was distributing it in Australia, then
I can ask both
Yeah.
ways, but I guess what you're saying though, and this is going to have greater reach, is that if you want all the members of ISCET to be sending it out to their contacts,
okay, yeah.
as opposed to just Gemma going, "Hey, cool, you know, here's this thing." Like, how does it get to an Australian clinician?
Well, the idea was through the professional bodies. So if the professional bodies are identified, we'll have contact addresses for each of those, and it can come from one place potentially. But then
And
you
I can
have
ask the
stuff-
question,
Go
yeah.
on.
So I can ask the question, for example, if it comes to Optometry Australia, so if it was approved at City Uni or somewhere in the UK, if it comes to Optometry Australia, would they be able to distribute? I can ask the question.
Yeah. Okay, that would be useful. Yeah.
Yep.
Great. Anyone have anything else they'd like to discuss while we're all here together? No. All right. Well, it's great to meet you all together. Sorry, Rasha, you gonna say something?
I think we mentioned like having subgroups. So will we like have some potential subgroups and then we just present them in the next meeting, for example, like or we just ask people like how to make some
I
subgroups according to interests.
I think really the one subgroup we need to think about right now is potentially people who are interested in helping with the specific aspects of designing the survey, right?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Unless I'm missing
Yeah, that
something.
makes sense. I mean, we talked about
Yeah.
is it worth having starting to think about the sort of things that are going to need to be in place to actually produce a standard in parallel, or is that premature? Should we just be focusing on this survey until that's done, and then we don't start any work on any standard of any kind until we get there? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because that was already mentioned in the other meetings that we need to have, and it's one of the agenda things, like we need to have some guidelines and standards. So is everyone willing to work on that, or also there will be a subgroup? I think we can raise that also.
I think they've got to be. I think they've got to be subgroups as they come up, but I think it's something that we want to raise in the general meeting and say, "Hey, it's been suggested we will need a subgroup to run this particular aspect of it. Does anybody have any other suggestions? If everyone's happy with that, do people want to opt in?" I think it's got to go through the general meeting, but I do think that needs a little bit of direction to just say, "Hey, here's the starting point that we've thought of, or whatever." To kind of move that along, because even when we think of the standards, it's going to be different groups for each standard.
And that's going to be a huge task, is getting people to agree
Yeah.
on a lot of different where research institutes are involved, or clinicians, they'll have ways they already do things, and no one's going to want to do it a different way necessarily. I think at least what we have got an agreement on is the understanding that everyone's doing it. The way that everyone's doing it is fine, and they're just all slightly different. So there is an agreement at least on the fact that we need standards. So I guess we'll see how that process works. There are models for how it could work. And again, Ruth might be really helpful there, because she has been involved in the redrafting of the ISEV standards not too long ago. And that presumably involved a lot of voices as well. Yeah, good. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. And have a great day to those of you that have a day ahead of you. Yeah, great to see you all. So I think what I'll do with this is I'll write up the notes. I'll put a separate page on the main website. The recording will go on there, and I'll kind of summarize the notes from the meeting as well. Yeah, and I'll post that up when I get a chance. It may not be until next week now, because I'm just finishing for the week now. Yeah, that's great. Cool. Good to see you all.
Thanks, team.
So,
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Yeah.